Shadows and sunshine. The rain pounded against the windshield of Olivia Reed's weathered sedan as she squinted at the mansion looming ahead. The Westwood estate sprawled across 5 acres of manicured landscape, a monument to wealth that made her ancient Honda look even more pathetic as she pulled up to the security gate. "I shouldn't be here," she muttered, checking her reflection in the rearview mirror. At 28, Olivia's warm brown eyes and honey blonde hair pulled back in a practical bun gave her a professional appearance. But nothing could hide the nervousness etched across her face. 6 months ago, she'd been teaching dance at her own small studio in the city. Now, after a devastating fire and insurance nightmare had left her homeless and jobless, she was interviewing to be a caretaker for some rich man's children. The intercom crackled. "State your business. Olivia Reed. I have an interview with Mr. Westwood at 9. The gates swung open with mechanical precision, much like the household she was about to enter. According to her friend Jasmine, who worked in Westwood Industries' HR department, Dominic Westwood ran his home with the same efficiency and cold calculation he used to build his technology empire. A stern-faced housekeeper named Mrs. Porter greeted her at the door. "You're 3 minutes late," she said without preamble, ushering Olivia inside. Mr. Westwood despises tardiness. The foyer alone was bigger than Olivia's former apartment. Her sensible flats clicked against marble floors as she followed Mrs. Porter through corridors adorned with artwork that probably cost more than she'd earn in a lifetime. "Wait here," Mrs. Porter instructed, leaving Olivia in a study that screamed masculine power. Dark woods, leather-bound books, and a massive desk that seemed designed to intimidate. "Miss Reed," the voice from the doorway made her jump. Dominic Westwood stood taller than she'd expected, his broad shoulders encased in a perfectly tailored suit. At 40, his face retained the sharp handsomeness that occasionally graced business magazines, though lines of exhaustion framed his steel-gray eyes. A touch of silver at his temples added to the aura of authority. "Mr. Westwood," Olivia extended her hand, which he barely touched before moving to sit behind his desk. "Your resume is lacking for this position," he began without pleasantries. "No experience as a nanny or tutor." "I have 8 years of teaching experience," Olivia countered. "Different context, but the same skills: patience, creativity, discipline." His eyebrow arched. "Teaching dance. Hardly practical." "On the contrary," she said, surprising herself with her boldness. "Dance teaches discipline, focus, teamwork, and perseverance. Qualities I believe are quite practical for any child's development." Dominic's expression remained impassive as he studied her. "My daughters are 10. Since their mother's death 3 years ago, they've had 4 caretakers. None lasted longer than 8 months. Perhaps they need someone who sees them as more than a job," Olivia suggested. A flicker of something, irritation, interest, crossed his face. "The position is temporary. 3 months while their regular governess recovers from surgery." He slid a document across the desk. "The salary and expectations are outlined here." Olivia glanced at the figure and nearly gasped. It was triple what she'd made at her studio. "I understand you're currently between residences," Dominic continued, his tone making it sound like a personal failing rather than misfortune. "The position includes room and board in the East Wing." Before she could respond, the study door burst open and 2 identical girls with dark curls and their father's gray eyes tumbled in. "Daddy, Ms. Porter won't let us—" The first girl stopped abruptly. Noticing Olivia, "Penelope, Charlotte," Dominic's voice softened marginally. "I'm in a meeting." Charlotte, distinguishable by a small birthmark near her right eye, approached Olivia curiously. "Are you going to be our new nanny?" "Perhaps," Olivia smiled warmly. "I'm Olivia. Do you like music?" Penelope asked, scrutinizing her. "I love music. I was a dance teacher before." The twins exchanged excited glances that Dominic quickly tempered with a stern look. "Girls, return to your lessons. I'll see you at dinner." After they reluctantly departed, Dominic turned back to Olivia. "They need structure, not frivolity. Their education takes priority over entertainment." Olivia nodded but internally bristled at his dismissal of her life's passion. "I understand priorities, Mr. Westwood. I also understand that children need balance." "Balance," he repeated with faint derision. A concept often invoked by those who lack focus. The interview concluded shortly after, with Dominic informing her that she'd start the following Monday if she wanted the position. Despite his condescension, Olivia accepted on the spot. She needed this job, and something about those twin girls tugged at her heart. As Mrs. Porter showed her out, Olivia caught sight of the twins watching from an upstairs window. They waved, and she waved back, feeling a strange certainty that her life had just changed course in ways she couldn't begin to imagine. Beneath the surface, 2 weeks into her employment at the Westwood estate, Olivia had established a routine with the twins that balanced their rigorous academic schedule with moments of creative expression. The girls were brilliant but restless, caged birds in a gilded mansion. "Miss Olivia, look." Charlotte held up her mathematics worksheet. "I finished all the problems." "Excellent work," Olivia praised, checking the answers. "You have a natural talent for numbers." "Father says mathematics is essential for business," Charlotte recited. Though her enthusiasm dimmed slightly, Penelope, sprawled on the floor with her history book, looked up. "Father says a lot of things are essential, like Latin." "And proper etiquette," added Charlotte. "And investment strategies." Penelope continued with a dramatic sigh that made Olivia stifle a laugh. The girls' schedule was indeed daunting. Language lessons, mathematics, science, history, piano, and etiquette training. Nowhere in their regimen was there room for simple play or creative exploration. Olivia had begun introducing small brain breaks between subjects, 5 minutes of movement or creative expression that the girls eagerly anticipated. "We've earned our break now, right?" Penelope asked hopefully. Olivia checked her watch. 10 minutes today. You've both worked exceptionally hard." The girls cheered and raced to the cabinet where Olivia had stashed a small portable speaker. As the music started, Olivia led them through a simple dance combination. Nothing elaborate, just enough to get their energy flowing. What amazed her was how quickly they learned the movements. Both girls had a natural sense of rhythm that suggested untapped potential. As Penelope executed a perfect turn, Olivia couldn't help but wonder if there was more musical talent hiding beneath their father's academic expectations. "Miss Olivia," Charlotte whispered suddenly, her eyes wide. "Father's home early." The music cut off abruptly as Penelope rushed to shut down the speaker. Olivia turned to find Dominic Westwood standing in the doorway, his expression unreadable. "Mr. Westwood," she greeted him calmly. "The girls have completed their mathematics and history assignments. We were taking a short movement break before starting their science lesson." "A break," he repeated flatly, his gaze sweeping over the room. "Research shows that physical activity improves cognitive function and information retention," Olivia explained, refusing to appear apologetic. 5 minutes of movement can enhance an hour of study." Dominic's jaw tightened. "I don't recall approving changes to their curriculum." "It's not a change, sir. It's an enhancement." The twins watched this exchange with the wary expressions of children accustomed to disappointment. It strengthened Olivia's resolve. "Girls, please gather your science materials," Dominic instructed, his tone softening slightly when addressing his daughters. "I need to speak with Ms. Reed privately." Once they had reluctantly left, Dominic closed the door. "Ms. Reed, I hired you to maintain their education, not to distract them with dancing. With all due respect, Mr. Westwood, I was hired to care for your daughter's well-being. That includes their intellectual development and their emotional health." "Their emotional health is fine." Olivia took a deep breath. "Have you heard them play piano recently?" The question seemed to catch him off guard. "What? Your daughters? Have you listened to them play?" "They practice daily. Their instructor says they're progressing adequately." "Adequately?" Olivia echoed. "Mr. Westwood, your daughters don't just play adequately. They have extraordinary musical instincts, but they play mechanically because they've been taught that music is just another subject to master, not something to feel." Something flickered in Dominic's eyes, perhaps surprise, perhaps irritation at her presumption. "You've overstepped, Ms. Reed." "Perhaps," she acknowledged. "But before you dismiss what I'm saying, just listen to them. Really listen." Later that evening, after putting the girls to bed, Olivia was arranging their lessons for the following day when she heard music from the rarely used conservatory. Curious, she followed the sound. Through the partially open door, she saw Dominic sitting silently in a leather chair, his attention fixed on Charlotte at the grand piano. The girl was playing a Chopin nocturne with technical precision, unaware of her audience. When she finished, Penelope took her place and began the same piece but with subtle differences. Where Charlotte played with perfect technique, Penelope played with emotion, adding nuances that weren't on the sheet music. Dominic's expression had softened, revealing a vulnerability Olivia hadn't witnessed before. She quietly retreated, not wanting to intrude on this private moment. The next morning, an unexpected package arrived for the girls. 2 books on musical composition and a note in Dominic's precise handwriting. For additional study, if interested, Mrs. Porter raised her eyebrows when she delivered it. First time I've seen him add to their schedule in years. Usually he only removes things he deems unnecessary. Over the following days, Olivia noticed subtle changes. Dominic began arriving home earlier, sometimes passing by the schoolroom during their brain breaks. Though he never participated, his objections ceased. Once, Olivia even caught him tapping his fingers against his leg in rhythm with the music. One afternoon, while the girls were at their weekly swimming lesson, Olivia was sorting through their bookshelf when she discovered a photograph tucked inside a mathematics textbook. A younger Dominic with a beautiful woman at a piano, both laughing. "That's their mother," Mrs. Porter said quietly from the doorway. "Sophia. She was a concert pianist before she married him. After she died, Mr. Westwood packed away her music, her recordings, everything." The girls were too young to remember how their home was once filled with music. Olivia carefully returned the photo to its hiding place, understanding dawning. The girl's talent wasn't just natural ability, it was inheritance. And Dominic's resistance wasn't merely about academic focus, it was about pain. That evening, as Olivia passed Dominic's study on her way to her quarters, he called her name. "The girls' quarterly assessments," he said, handing her a folder. "Their academic performance has improved." His tone was carefully neutral, but the acknowledgement was clear. "They're remarkable children, Mr. Westwood." "Yes," he agreed, meeting her eyes directly for perhaps the first time. "They are." As Olivia turned to leave, he added, "Their piano instructor mentioned they've been asking about dance accompaniment. Did you put them up to that?" "No," she answered honestly. "But music and movement are natural partners, like mathematics and logic, or like Sophia and the piano," he finished quietly, more to himself than to her. In that moment, standing in the doorway of his study, Olivia glimpsed the man beneath the tycoon's facade, a widower still wrestling with ghosts, a father trying to protect his daughters the only way he knew how. The distance between them suddenly felt both vast and paper-thin. The invitation. A month later, autumn had transformed the Westwood estate grounds into a canvas of amber and gold. Olivia sat on a garden bench watching the twins practice. A simple dance routine they had choreographed themselves, a project that had begun as a mathematics lesson about patterns and had evolved into something beautiful. "Ms. Olivia," Penelope called out. "Watch this transition." The girls moved in perfect synchronization, their faces alight with joy that made Olivia's heart swell with pride. In just 2 months, they had blossomed, not just in their studies, but in confidence and creativity. "Magnificent," she applauded. "Your musicality is exceptional. Do you think Father would like it?" Charlotte asked, her voice carrying a cautious hope that had become more frequent lately. Before Olivia could answer, Mrs. Porter appeared on the garden path. "Ms. Reed, Mr. Westwood requests your presence in his study." The twins exchanged worried glances. Despite the subtle warming in Dominic's demeanor, his summons still provoked anxiety. "Continue practicing," Olivia encouraged them. "I'll be back shortly." Dominic was on a phone call when she entered his study, his back to the door as he gazed out at the autumn landscape. The sunlight caught the silver threads in his dark hair, and for a moment, Olivia was struck by how the harsh lines of his profile had softened over the weeks. "That won't be acceptable," he was saying to someone on the line. "The foundation specifically supports arts education for disadvantaged youth. Redirecting those funds would violate our mission statement." He paused, listening. "No, Jonathan. I'm not flexible on this point." He ended the call and turned, seeming unsurprised to find her there. "Ms. Reed, thank you for coming." "The girls are worried I'm being reprimanded," she said with a small smile. Something that might have been amusement flickered across his face. "Are you expecting to be?" "Not today," she replied. "Their academic results have been excellent, and they've maintained their schedule while incorporating creative activities." "Indeed." He gestured for her to sit. "That's partly why I wanted to speak with you. The Westwood Foundation hosts an annual winter charity ball in 3 weeks. The proceeds fund arts programs in underserved schools. Olivia nodded. She'd seen the event mentioned in society pages, a glittering affair attended by the city's elite. The girls will be attending this year, he continued. It will be their first formal event since, he cleared his throat, since their mother passed. I'd like you to help prepare them and accompany us that evening. Olivia tried to mask her surprise. Of course. I'd be happy to help them prepare. You misunderstand, Dominic said, studying her with an intensity that made her pulse quicken. I'm inviting you to attend the ball, not as their caretaker, but as my guest. The invitation hung in the air between them, carrying implications Olivia wasn't sure she understood or should acknowledge. That's unexpected, she managed finally. The girls trust you, he said, as if that explained everything, and you've shown remarkable insight into their needs. Your perspective would be valuable as we consider expanding the Foundation's programs. It was a professional justification for what felt like a personal invitation, and Olivia wasn't certain how to navigate the distinction. The girls would certainly be more comfortable with you there, he added when she remained silent. Then I'd be honored to attend, she said. Finally, something shifted in his expression. Relief, perhaps. Excellent. The Foundation will cover any expenses for appropriate attire. That's not necessary, Olivia began, pride rising. It's not charity, Ms. Reed. It's a business expense. His tone softened. But I suspect you'll refuse regardless. Their eyes met, and Olivia felt the strange connection that had been building between them, a mutual recognition that transcended their different worlds. Thank you for the offer, she said, simply, when she returned to the garden. The twins immediately bombarded her with questions. Are you in trouble? Charlotte asked anxiously. Not at all, Olivia reassured them. Your father has invited all of us to attend the winter charity ball. Their eyes widened with excitement. Really, we never get to go to Father's events? Well, this time you are, and we have 3 weeks to prepare. The following days took on a new energy as regular lessons were supplemented with etiquette refreshers and dance practices. The girls were ecstatic when Dominic approved Olivia's suggestion to incorporate basic ballroom instruction into their physical education. Father never dances, Penelope confided during one lesson. Mother tried to teach him, but he said he had 2 left feet. He only danced at their wedding, Charlotte added. Grandmother said it was the only time she ever saw him nervous. These glimpses into Dominic's past fascinated Olivia. The stern, controlled businessman had once been a nervous groom, stepping on his bride's toes during their first dance. It humanized him in ways that made her increasingly aware of him, not just as her employer, but as a man. One evening, as Olivia was leaving the library with research materials for the girls' history project, she literally collided with Dominic in the hallway. His hand steadied her, warm against her shoulders. I apologize, he said, not immediately releasing her. I was distracted. Up close, she could see the fatigue in his eyes. Difficult day? The event planning committee wants to replace the live orchestra with a DJ to save costs, he said, surprising her with the candid response. It seems trivial, but Sophia always insisted on supporting professional musicians. The mention of his late wife was rare, and Olivia treaded carefully. It's not trivial at all. Music sets the tone for the entire event. Exactly. His hands finally dropped from her shoulders, but he remained close. The girls mentioned you've been teaching them ballroom basics, just simple waltz steps. They're quick learners. A strange hesitation seemed to grip him. I should probably refresh my own skills before making a fool of myself. Was Dominic Westwood actually asking for her help? Olivia couldn't quite believe it. The library has more space than my office, he continued, gesturing to the room she'd just left. Before she could overthink it, Olivia set down her books and walked back into the library. A basic waltz has 3 counts, she began, demonstrating the simple box step. Dominic watched her movements carefully before joining her. His first attempt was stiff, his natural grace hampered by self-consciousness. Relax your shoulders, she suggested, daringly placing her hand there to guide him. Dancing isn't so different from the martial arts you practice each morning. He looked surprised. You've seen me? My window overlooks the garden, she admitted. You're quite disciplined. Some would say rigid, he replied with unexpected self-awareness. Discipline becomes rigidity when it lacks purpose, Olivia said. Now shall we try with music? She cued a Strauss waltz on her phone, and they began again. This time Dominic tentatively placed his hand at her waist, maintaining a respectful distance as they moved through the basic pattern. "You're a natural," she encouraged, though it wasn't entirely true. What he lacked in fluidity, he compensated for with intense focus. "Hardly," he said with a rare, self-deprecating smile that transformed his face, "but perhaps not hopeless." They continued for several minutes, and gradually his movements became more confident. When the music ended, neither immediately stepped away. "Thank you," he said quietly. "The girls are fortunate to have your guidance." Before Olivia could respond, Mrs. Porter appeared at the door, her expression carefully neutral. "Excuse the interruption. Mr. Jonathan Blackwood is on the line regarding the foundation event." Dominic's professional mask slipped back into place. "Of course. Good night, Ms. Reed." As the ball approached, Olivia found herself both anticipating and dreading the event. With her modest savings, she purchased a simple but elegant emerald gown that complemented her fair coloring without being ostentatious. What troubled her wasn't the prospect of navigating high society, but the growing awareness that her feelings for Dominic had become complicated. She was temporary in his world, a 3-month solution to a childcare problem. Soon the regular governess would return, and Olivia would move on to rebuild her own life. Yet as she helped the excited twins prepare for their first formal event, she couldn't ignore the bittersweet realization that she had found a place in this unlikely household, one that she wasn't ready to relinquish. The dance that changed everything, the Grand Plaza. Hotel ballroom sparkled with crystalline chandeliers and tasteful winter-themed decorations. Ice sculptures glittered between arrangements of white roses and silver-dusted evergreens, while string musicians played softly from a small stage at the far end of the room. Olivia stood near the entrance, momentarily overwhelmed by the opulence. Her emerald gown, though beautiful, felt conspicuously simple among the designer creations adorning the city's elite. She smoothed a nervous hand over the silk fabric, grateful at least that the twins had enthusiastically approved her choice. "Ms. Olivia," Penelope's voice cut through her anxiety. The twins approached, radiant in matching midnight blue dresses with subtle silver embroidery. Charlotte's hair was swept up in an elegant knot, while Penelope wore hers in a waterfall of curls down her back, small choices that highlighted their individuality despite their identical features. "You both look absolutely stunning," Olivia smiled, bending slightly to adjust Charlotte's necklace. "So do you," Charlotte whispered. "You look like a princess." "Father's been looking for you," Penelope added with a meaningful glance that made Olivia blush despite herself. As if summoned by his daughter's words, Dominic appeared behind them. The formal black tuxedo accentuated his imposing physique, but it was his expression that caught Olivia's attention, a fleeting look of appreciation quickly masked by his usual reserve. "The girls are right," he said quietly. "You look lovely, Ms. Reed." "Thank you," she replied, suddenly conscious of the warmth in her cheeks. "This is a beautiful event. The orchestra was clearly the right choice." "Indeed." His eyes held hers for a moment longer than necessary before he turned to the twins. "Ladies, several board members are eager to meet you. Shall we?" As they moved through the crowd, Olivia observed how naturally Dominic navigated these social waters, introducing his daughters with obvious pride. The twins, too, surprised her with their poise, though they occasionally glanced back at her for reassurance. "Olivia Reed." A cultured female voice interrupted her observations. "I've been hoping to meet you." Olivia turned to find an elegant woman in her 60s appraising her with keen interest. "I'm sorry, have we met?" "Eleanor Westwood," the woman introduced herself with a warm smile. "Dominic's mother, and the twins' very curious grandmother." "It's a pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Westwood," Olivia replied, suddenly nervous under the scrutiny of those familiar gray eyes, so like Dominic's, yet warmer. "The pleasure is mine. My granddaughters have mentioned you in every phone call for the past 2 months." Eleanor linked her arm through Olivia's, guiding her toward a quieter corner. "Charlotte informed me that you've awakened the music in their home. Quite a poetic assessment for a 10-year-old. Olivia smiled, touched by the description. "They're remarkable girls with natural talents." "Yes, very much like their mother." Eleanor's gaze drifted to where Dominic stood with the twins. Sophia's death left a silence in their lives that Dominic hasn't known how to fill. He responds to grief with structure and control, always has, even as a boy. Unsure how to respond to this candid observation, Olivia remained silent. But recently I've noticed a change in him, Eleanor continued. Small things. He mentioned music the other day without that pained expression. He called me last week specifically to tell me about the girls' dance progress. Her shrewd eyes returned to Olivia. I suspect you're responsible for more than just their academic education. I've only encouraged what was already there. Olivia demurred. Sometimes that's exactly what's needed. Eleanor patted her arm. Now tell me about your background in dance. The twins said you once owned a studio. Their conversation was interrupted by a commotion near the stage. The orchestra conductor had collapsed and medical personnel were rushing to assist him. A murmur of concern spread through the crowd as Dominic strode quickly to the scene, speaking urgently with the event coordinator. After several tense minutes, Dominic approached the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm pleased to report that Maestro Abernathy is stable and receiving medical attention. However, he will obviously be unable to continue this evening. A ripple of disappointed murmurs circulated through the ballroom. The Westwood Foundation Winter Ball has traditionally featured live music for 30 years, Dominic continued. I'm determined to maintain that tradition tonight. Our orchestra is prepared to continue, but they require direction. From beside Olivia, Eleanor sighed. This is unfortunate. The musical portion is crucial for the donation announcements that follow. Olivia watched as Dominic conferred with the event coordinator, who seemed to be offering unsatisfactory solutions. Without the conductor, the carefully choreographed program was in jeopardy. Charlotte and Penelope suddenly appeared at Olivia's side, their expressions anxious. Father looks worried, Charlotte whispered. The whole event might be ruined, Penelope added. He worked so hard on it. Looking at their concerned faces, Olivia made an impulsive decision. Girls, does the orchestra have sheet music for Tchaikovsky's Waltz of the Flowers? Yes, Charlotte nodded quickly. It's part of the program. Why? I need you to tell your father something. Olivia knelt to their level, whispering instructions that made their eyes widen with excitement. Minutes later, Dominic approached their small group, his expression strained until he saw Olivia. The girls mentioned you might have a solution. I was principal dancer with the Metropolitan Ballet Company before I opened my studio, Olivia explained, surprised by her own steadiness. I'm intimately familiar with orchestral conducting for dance pieces, particularly Tchaikovsky. I could direct the orchestra through the key program pieces while incorporating a brief dance demonstration. It would maintain the live music tradition while adding an unexpected element to the evening. Dominic stared at her as if seeing her for the first time. You were with the Metropolitan? For 8 years, she confirmed. Before I left to teach. He glanced toward the stage where the musicians waited uncertainly. You're certain you can do this? Absolutely. Something shifted in his expression. Trust, perhaps, or admiration. Then we'd be grateful for your assistance. What followed was a flurry of activity, as Olivia conferred with the orchestra and quickly changed into the ballet slippers she'd fortuitously brought for the twins to practice in. The event coordinator made a brief announcement explaining the change in program, and then Olivia took position before the orchestra. The musicians responded instantly to her confident direction, the familiar strains of Tchaikovsky filling the ballroom. After establishing the rhythm, Olivia moved gracefully to the center of the floor, transitioning seamlessly from conductor to dancer. Years of training took over as she performed an abbreviated but exquisite interpretation of the classic piece. Her simple gown, so different from the elaborate costumes she'd once worn, somehow enhanced the authenticity of her movement. This wasn't a staged performance but an expression of pure artistry born from necessity. The ballroom fell silent except for the music, hundreds of eyes watching in astonishment as the children's caretaker transformed into something extraordinary. Through a turn, Olivia caught sight of Dominic standing perfectly still, his expression one of undisguised wonder. As the piece concluded, spontaneous applause erupted. Olivia curtsied gracefully before returning to conduct the orchestra through 2 additional pieces, incorporating the planned donation announcements between selections. When the formal program concluded and general dancing resumed, Olivia finally stepped away, her heart pounding with exhilaration and nervous energy. She'd barely made it to the edge of the dance floor when Dominic appeared before her, offering a crystal flute of champagne. "That," he said quietly, "was remarkable. Thank you." She accepted the glass, suddenly self-conscious. "I hope it didn't seem presumptuous." Presumptuous. He seemed genuinely puzzled. "You saved the event," his voice lowered. "Why didn't you tell me about your background with the Metropolitan?" "You never asked," she replied simply. "And it didn't seem relevant to teaching the girls." His expression grew thoughtful. "I've spent 2 months underestimating you, haven't I?" Before she could respond, Eleanor joined them, her eyes bright with approval. "Magnificent, my dear. The foundation board is ecstatic. Donation pledges are already exceeding last year's total." The twins appeared next, bubbling with excitement. "Everyone's asking about you, Ms. Olivia." "Indeed," came a new voice belonging to a distinguished older gentleman. Jonathan Blackwood, Foundation Chairman. "Ms. Reed, your performance was inspired. We'd love to discuss your involvement with our arts education initiative." The rest of the evening passed in a blur of introductions and conversations. Throughout it all, Olivia was acutely aware of Dominic's presence nearby, his gaze finding hers across the room with an intensity that sent warmth spreading through her chest. As the event wound down, the orchestra began playing a traditional waltz. The twins, who had been watching the dancing with longing, turned hopeful eyes toward their father. "Father," Charlotte began tentatively, "could we try the waltz steps Ms. Olivia taught us?" To Olivia's surprise, Dominic smiled, a genuine, unguarded smile that transformed his entire countenance. "I believe that's an excellent suggestion." He extended his hand to Penelope while Charlotte turned expectantly to Olivia. Soon they were moving together on the dance floor, the 4 of them forming their own small circle amidst the other dancers. Dominic led Penelope with careful attention, occasionally catching Olivia's eye over his daughter's head with a look that made her heart stutter. When the music changed, the girls swapped partners and suddenly Olivia found herself in Dominic's arms. His hand was warm at her waist, his steps more confident than during their practice session. "You've been practicing," she observed. "I had an excellent teacher," he replied, guiding her through a turn with unexpected grace. They moved together as if they'd danced 100 times before, finding a natural rhythm that required no words. The ballroom seemed to fade around them, the space between them charged with unspoken feelings. "Olivia," he said finally, using her first name for the first time. Mr. Westwood," the event coordinator interrupted apologetically. "The mayor is leaving and wishes to speak with you before she goes." The moment shattered. Dominic's expression shuddered slightly as he nodded. "Of course. Please excuse me." As he walked away, Olivia felt the weight of reality return. Tonight had been magical, but tomorrow she would still be the temporary caretaker, and he would still be Dominic Westwood, CEO and widower. Whatever had sparked between them existed in a world as ephemeral as a dance. What she didn't realize, as she gathered the sleepy twins to take them home, was that Dominic had already made a decision that would change everything. Hearts in harmony, the morning after the gala, Olivia woke to find the Westwood mansion buzzing with activity. Staff moved purposefully through the corridors, preparing for what Mrs. Porter cryptically described as an important announcement. The twins were equally mysterious, exchanging secretive glances at breakfast. "Father said he has something to discuss with everyone," Charlotte explained, buttering her toast with exaggerated concentration. "Including you," Penelope added meaningfully. Before Olivia could press for details, Dominic entered the breakfast room. Despite the early hour, he was impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit, though the usual severity of his appearance was softened by the absence of a tie. "Good morning," he greeted them, his eyes lingering on Olivia for a moment before addressing his daughters. "I trust you both slept well despite the late evening?" The twins nodded eagerly. "Is it time for the announcement?" Charlotte asked. "After breakfast," Dominic replied, accepting a cup of coffee from Mrs. Porter. "Ms. Reed, once the girls have finished, would you join me in the conservatory?" Curiosity and apprehension followed Olivia through the morning routine. Last night's events had shifted something fundamental between them, but in the clear light of day she wasn't certain what that meant, or what it could mean, given the temporary nature of her position. When she finally made her way to the conservatory, she found it transformed. The space that had been largely unused during her time at the mansion now gleamed with purpose. The grand piano had been polished to a high shine, and fresh flowers adorned the previously empty surfaces. Most surprisingly, the heavy drapes that had muted the room were drawn back, allowing autumn sunlight to pour through the wall of windows overlooking the gardens. Dominic stood by the piano, examining a framed photograph that hadn't been there before, a portrait of a beautiful dark-haired woman whose features echoed in his daughter's faces. "Sophia," he said without turning, somehow aware of Olivia's presence. This was her sanctuary. Olivia approached cautiously, sensing the significance of this moment. "It's a beautiful space. Yes." He finally turned to face her. "It was designed specifically for her when we built this house. The acoustics are perfect for chamber music." His hand rested briefly on the piano's polished surface. "After she died, I couldn't bear to hear music here. It seemed a betrayal of her memory somehow. And now?" Olivia asked gently. "Now I realize the true betrayal was the silence." His gray eyes held hers steadily. "You helped me understand that." The directness of his gaze made her heart quicken. "The girls have their mother's talent," she said carefully. "It deserved to be nurtured. It wasn't just about the girls." Dominic moved closer, his usual reserve replaced by a quiet intensity. "Last night, watching you dance, I remembered something Sophia once told me. She said that true art isn't just beautiful. It awakens something in those who witness it." He gestured toward the transformed room. "This morning I had the conservatory reopened. The Foundation Board has unanimously approved a new program using this space for masterclasses for talented young musicians who can't afford private instruction. The twins will participate as peer students." Olivia's eyes widened with surprise and delight. "That's wonderful. The girls will thrive with that kind of creative community." "I hope so," he agreed. "But there's something else I wanted to discuss with you." His expression grew more serious. "Ms. Reynolds, the girls' regular governess, has decided not to return. Her recovery has given her time to reconsider her priorities, and she's accepted a position closer to her family in Boston." "I see," Olivia said carefully, uncertain where this was leading. "I'd like to offer you a permanent position, not as the girls' governess, but as the director of the new youth arts program." He handed her a folder containing a formal proposal. "The position would include overseeing the twins' creative education, but your primary responsibility would be developing the Foundation's arts initiative." Stunned, Olivia opened the folder. The detailed proposal outlined a comprehensive program that perfectly aligned with her own teaching philosophy. The salary figure made her breath catch. "This is incredibly generous," she managed finally. "It's not generosity," Dominic corrected. "It's recognition of your exceptional qualifications and the impact you've already had on this household." The sincerity in his voice made her look up from the papers. He stood closer now, the morning sunlight illuminating the silver at his temples. "There's something else," he continued, his voice dropping slightly. "Something not outlined in that proposal." "What's that?" she asked, suddenly aware of her quickened pulse. "Last night when we danced, I wanted to tell you." He paused, seeming to search for the right words. "Olivia, these past months you've brought more than music back into this house. You've reminded me that there's more to life than work and obligation. You've shown me how to be a better father to my daughters." His vulnerability, so at odds with the powerful businessman the world knew, touched her deeply. "The girls adore you," she said softly, "and I—" He stopped, then started again with characteristic directness. "I find myself thinking about you in ways that go beyond professional admiration." The admission hung between them, changing the very air in the sunlit room. "I understand if this complicates your decision about the position," he continued when she remained silent. "And I want to be clear that the offer stands regardless of how you respond to my personal feelings. Your professional value to the Foundation is entirely separate." "Dominic," she began, using his first name deliberately. "I'd be lying if I said I hadn't developed feelings for you as well. But there are complications beyond our professional relationship." "Such as?" "We come from different worlds," she pointed out. "Your life is—" "My life," he interrupted gently, "has been incomplete for a very long time. I buried myself in work after Sophia died, focusing on providing security and education for the girls while neglecting what they needed most." a home filled with life and creativity. His expression softened. The world you think I belong to, that world of business acquisitions and social obligations, has never been where I found meaning. And where do you find meaning? She asked, increasingly. A smile touched his lips. In watching my daughters dance across the garden, in hearing laughter echo through rooms that were silent for too long, in conversations with a remarkable woman who challenges my assumptions and makes me see possibilities I had forgotten existed. He took her hand, the gesture both tentative and certain. I'm not asking for promises, Olivia. I'm asking for a chance to explore what might be possible between us at whatever pace feels right. Before she could respond, excited voices preceded the twins' arrival. They burst into the conservatory, then stopped abruptly at the sight of their father holding Olivia's hand. Did you ask her? Penelope demanded without preamble. About the position, yes, Dominic replied, not releasing Olivia's hand. And? Charlotte prompted. Olivia looked at their hopeful faces, then back to Dominic. The path forward wasn't simple, but it was suddenly clear. I'd be honored to accept the position, she said. The program you've outlined is exactly the kind of work I've always wanted to do. The twins cheered, rushing forward to embrace her. And the other question? Penelope whispered, not quite quietly enough. Penelope, Dominic admonished gently, though his eyes remained on Olivia. Olivia smiled, squeezing his hand. That's a more complicated question. I think it deserves a thoughtful conversation. Perhaps over dinner? The delight that spread across his face was answer enough. Later that afternoon, as the twins practiced a duet on the newly tuned piano, Olivia stood with Dominic by the conservatory windows. The autumn garden beyond was preparing for winter's rest, but there was promise in its carefully tended structure, the dormant beauty that would awaken with spring. I won't pretend it will be easy, Dominic said quietly, watching his daughters. I've been alone for a long time. I've developed habits that won't change overnight. I'm not asking for overnight, Olivia replied, just for honesty and patience from both of us. He turned to face her fully. Those I can promise without reservation. In the background, the twins' music swelled, filling the once silent room with harmonies that seemed to bridge past and future. As Dominic's hand found hers again, Olivia felt the rhythm of possibility between them. A new dance beginning, tentative but full of promise. Eleanor Westwood found them there an hour later. The four of them gathered around the piano as Olivia demonstrated a simple choreography to accompany the twins' playing. The family matriarch paused in the doorway, observing the tableau with quiet satisfaction. It's been a long time since this house felt like a home, she murmured to Mrs. Porter, who had appeared beside her with afternoon tea. The housekeeper nodded, her usually stern expression softening. Music has returned to Westwood. Yes, Eleanor agreed, watching her son laugh at something Olivia had said. And much more besides. Inside the conservatory, sunlight caught the crystal vase of fresh flowers on the piano, sending prisms of color dancing across the keys. Charlotte captured one in her palm, delighted by the rainbow effect on her skin. Look, Father, it's like magic. Dominic exchanged a glance with Olivia, the connection between them deepening with each shared moment. Yes, he agreed, his voice rich with newfound certainty. Some things are. The twins resumed their playing, the melody rising clear and true through the mansion that had stood silent for too long. As Olivia began to dance, her movements bringing the music to life, Dominic watched with the certainty that what had begun as a temporary arrangement had transformed into something timeless, a harmony of hearts that, once found, could never again be lost to silence.